squared away for 500. Yes, I had one of my buddies come and look at it. But this is legally now, get yourself in there. Yeah, no. And he sent out a young man, and he looked at it, and he goes, this looks like it's on our easement. But then when I talked to his boss or somebody said no. And I'm going, well, you guys give me a break, at least say yes or no. It's like a bunch of politicians to me, you know what I mean? Okay, I'll talk to him again.
Order at 6:01, is that look right? Is there anything to report? Closed session, excuse me.
No, there's nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Shall we have roll call?
Councilmember Overton.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Purdock.
Here.
Vice Mayor Slutin.
Here.
Mayor Kramer.
Here. Thank you. Now, if we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Purdock, would you lead us?
Be my honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll remain standing for the convocation. Dale Rogers, would you come up, please?
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for inviting us here, and thank you, Lord, for those that are here to do our business of our little town. Lord, we want to thank you for filling our lake. We want to thank you for allowing us to live in such a beautiful part of the world. Lord, be with us this night and guide us. We ask you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
You may be seated. Okay, all items on the agenda will be open to public comment before final action is taken. Citizens wishing to introduce written material into record at the public meeting on any item are requested to provide a copy of written material, and it looks like I have two of them here, prior to the meeting date. Speakers must restrict their comments to the item as it appears on the, well, this is on the agenda items, but and stay within a 3-minute time limit. So, shall we go ahead with public comment? We have Angie Louise. Is she in here? No? All right, well, Mr. Burdock, she had a message for you, so. Secondly, Thomas Karapoulos. Mr. Karapoulos? Nope. Okay, then. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Good point. Good. So moving on. I apparently jumped the gun a little bit on the closed session, but we've already done that. So adoption of the agenda. Mr. Flora, are there any changes?
Yes, there are two changes to the agenda. Item number 1, swearing in of police officer, needs to be delayed, so that item will be pulled. And then the second item is, we'd like to request that the council hear an emergency item tonight. There was an item that came up after the agenda was posted, but is time critical, and we'd like to have the council hear this item. So this item is related to authorizing the city manager and police chief to have access to confidential information relayed by PG&E as part of the public safety power shutdown, and so the council has to approve a non-disclosure agreement. And so the appropriate steps here would be the council has to take a 4/5 vote on whether to hear the emergency item. If that passes, then we would have a discussion about the item itself.
I believe you all have that in front of you, so
We have to move on this.
Do we want to talk about that at all? Anybody have any comments, or I'll take a motion if not?
I move that we add an emergency item to tonight's agenda. It's the emergency consideration of non-disclosure and mutual assistance under the business section of our agenda.
Second?
All right, this needs a roll call vote. Oh,
Councilmember Overton?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Aye.
Councilmember Purdock?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sluten?
Aye.
And Mayor Kramer?
aye, and that's unanimous, so we can go ahead with
Item 17.
Okay, yeah, as I briefly described, last year when the public safety power shutdown happened, as I understand, there was somewhat of a scramble because there was a need for some local officials to have access to confidential information, primarily related to medically fragile people in the community, as well as well, I think that was the primary thing last year, and so there was a lot of back and forth, and information did not flow quickly. So this year, PG&E would like each agency to approve officials to have access to that and do it early in the process before this happens. We've already had one public safety power shutdown in Northern California last weekend, so the individuals that they are interested in sharing information with are myself as the city manager, the police chief, and also Chief Cepeda. And so this agreement would be allowing our access to that. Now, I think one additional thing, we haven't, they have a special portal that they've supposedly set up. I believe it would be access to information on transmission lines and that sort of thing. So there may be some additional information that we would have access to for critical planning on which areas may be shut down, which areas maybe have access. But this is something we want to take care of as soon as possible. We need to do everything we can to protect the community. This is likely to happen multiple times this year. It could happen, any day, depending on weather conditions, and we would just ask that the council authorize execution of this agreement, allowing Chief White and myself to have access to this information.
Is there any public comment on this subject? Come up to the podium and state your name and...
Hi, I'm Patty Duke. Is there any way to contact the respiratory services, the different companies in this area, for those who are on oxygen?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible to contact them. I don't believe that that's something that's going to be the responsibility of the city to do that. PG&E has a number of communications processes in place to do everything they can, including door-to-door visits if necessary, to contact those that rely on electricity for their medical needs.
Yes, for continuous oxygen.
We will, part of this is providing us access to that same information, so we know the locations of those individuals. So if there are issues, we're able to more easily identify them and provide access if necessary.
Yeah, that would be a big concern. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, I'll bring it back to council. Any discussion? Authorize our city manager and police chief. Us.
So moved.
Second.
I don't think so, but.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just a comment on that. The PG&E has, if you have health issues, they will, they discount the bill to a certain amount kind of situation.
And I Can I
And that has to stay confidential.
state one more thing? too?
Councilwoman.
Also means we will have access to this, and we do have the emergency shelter. I think one thing that needs to be talked about, and either at the council level or between somebody here, is what are we going to use if we have a shutout from PG&E? How is people going to, let's say, are we going to open up as emergency? Either whether you want to bring it back to the council or talk about it between the mayor and you guys, but I think it needs to be discussed because people are already calling me and asking me. I don't know what to tell them.
I think that would be in a future agenda item. Is that?
We can do that. That'd certainly be a policy decision of the council on how to handle that. But what I would say and what I've been telling people is the community should not expect a disaster-like response from the city for 16,000 people in our community. This is going to happen. It's going to happen multiple times this year. And the important thing the community needs to do is prepare your own plan for your family and your business government to come and provide that for everyone. I mean, the best case we're going to be able to do is provide for those that are medically fragile. The community center only holds a few hundred people, and folks need to have their own plan. Buy a generator if you can afford one. Go stay with a relative. There's a tremendous number of resources available through PG&E's website on this. A lot of tips and all sorts of things that can be helpful. So that's what I've been telling people, but we'll be happy to put an item on the agenda to discuss this further.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. I think let's move on now to tobacco prevention and education. Hey.
Okay, so my name is Gina Lyle Griffin. I'm the project director for Lake County Tobacco Education Program, which is under the Public Health Division. And thank you to the council for putting us on the agenda. We appreciate that. The tobacco education program is funded through tobacco tax monies that are taxes on tobacco products in California through a state oversight. I'm here today to talk about a trend that cities and counties are going towards with adopting tobacco retail licenses for their own city or for the county or jurisdiction. A tobacco retail license that's local or that's citywide goes above and beyond the state level tobacco retail licenses that retailers currently pay. If you look at the first, you will see that at the state level, it does not fund local enforcement. It doesn't include extra retail policies. So when we talk about local enforcement, what we're talking about is like for underage sales. A local level tobacco retail license, also known as a TRL, can fund local level enforcement of purchase age requirements, and it can include plugins regarding flavors, e-cigarettes, package size, minimum price, and coupons. So on the second page of the packet that you have, you will see some samples of different types of tobacco retail licenses. I'd like to draw your attention to scenario 3, and I'm just going to read this example. Small town California recently passed an ordinance establishing local tobacco retail license program. Their definition of tobacco products includes e-cigarettes. All retailers that sell tobacco, including vape shops that only sell e-cigarettes, would have to apply for the local tobacco retail license in addition to the state tobacco retail license. The revenues generated from the local licenses would fund robust enforcement efforts, including compliance checks with stores that aren't selling tobacco to anyone under 21 years old. If the city council later decides to adopt a retail plug-in, they would also have to apply for e-cigarettes only retailers. So if you were to decide to do that, you would want to make sure you included e-cigarettes, so you wouldn't have to go back. The third page, I'd like to bring your attention to hold on here, I lost my place. Okay, third page of the packet. Table of youth sales rates. Before and after adoption of TRL. So I'd like to draw your attention to Woodland, Oroville, and Grass Valley. Grass Valley has a $100 annual fee. That's a local license. Their youth sales before they had the ordinance was, the violation rate was 27%, and it went to 0 after. Oroville was at 6%, and they went to 0 after. And Woodland was at 47%, and they went to 19% after. Just tried to use a couple of similar cities or areas for that.
I think you got Winter.
Woodland went to 32 days.
Quoted Winters. Woodlands.
Sorry.
32 and 8.
I circled one.
Very
Thank
similar.
you. 32 and 8? Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move on to an infographic here. And this is talking about how tobacco companies use stores to talk to kids and target kids. So if you'll notice, I'm not going to read everything on there, but just some of the things that tobacco companies do to target youth or underage purchasers would be promotion of products, like the sign that says vapes or e-cigarettes, and we see a lot of Juul advertised that way. Coupons, having a low price, or using like different ads like buy this and get this free, or just like having a very low price for things like Swishers, and also the placement of the products in the stores. So we just finished doing a survey. Every county in California had to do what's called the Healthy Stores for a Healthy Community survey. We did 77 stores in the county here. And what we did was we surveyed where things were placed, how much signage there was. It was cigarette, tobacco, any kind of tobacco product, e-cigarettes. And we also did alcohol and some food things. So those results are going to come out later. But when it was done 3 years ago, 97% of our stores sold e-cigarettes, and we had 100% of stores were within a few miles of a school. Okay, so I'm going to have you go to the next infographic, and this just shows a little bit about point of sale tobacco pricing. So if you set a minimum price for a tobacco product, if you have an ordinance or you do a TRL, you can set a minimum price so that really inexpensive products aren't available and as tempting for purchase, for underage purchase, or for people who have less money to spend. Pair minimum price with minimum package size. So a lot of cities and counties, they set a minimum package size, so you can't just buy like 1 or 2 of something. Also prohibiting the redemption of coupons, discounts, and promotions. A lot of times in a poorer area where there's a lot of health disparities, the tobacco companies the price will be much less. So we can go to another county and the same thing will cost more. So those adjustments are purposely made to make it easier for people to utilize. Okay, the next infographic is how to reduce tobacco retailer density and why you might want to do it. These are other things that could be considered as a plug-in, and that would be deciding whether you can cap retailers in a geographic area, you can prohibit retailers from locating near schools or youth-sensitive areas. So that has to do with density. Okay, so I'm going to move on to something that just came out, the California Tobacco Facts and Figures 2019, California Department of Public Health, California Tobacco Control Program, which is the program that oversees all of the tobacco education programs in the counties in the state. So I'd excerpt 5 pages from the report that I thought were important to this area to bring attention to. The first one is adult cigarette use by region, and you can see that there is a map of California. Lake County for cigarette smoking rate among California adults by geographic region. Lake County, the rate is 25.1%. It is the highest rate in the state, and it is 5% higher than all of the other highest counties, which are Lawson, Siskiyou, Sierra, and Trinity. They sit at about 20.3%. So we have 1/4 of our adults smoking, and that's just cigarettes. That's not talking about all tobacco. But when we talk about the health issues that we face in our county and the fact of our health rankings, it's just something definitely to be aware of and consider. So the next page is youth tobacco use by demographic. I forgot to say on the last page, the statewide average is 11.7% of adults smoking, so when you compare us to the statewide average, we're double, if not more. The youth tobacco use rate in our high schools is 22.7%. That's for any tobacco product, and that was from the California Healthy Kids Survey. We have a new survey that's out now, and I can present those at another time. So on the demographic statewide, just to call out a couple of the demographic tobacco use rates among California youth that are notable, that are high, would be 12th graders, LGBTQ, our American Indian population, white population, Pacific Islander. Those are higher users, and they go above the statewide use level that they like to see, and we also are very high, but this is the California rate. Okay. One of the bigger issues that we face is with youth use is the product type that they choose to use and flavors. So on this chart that you see here, youth flavored tobacco use, it shows that 10.9% use any tobacco that's flavored, and then 1.8% use unflavored. So the point being here is that youth that use tobacco products, 80% or more use a flavored tobacco product, or they start with a flavored tobacco product. And many times we've interviewed, and there's been a lot of surveys that have done, and a lot of youth said that if it wasn't flavored, like the vapes, the chew, that they probably would not utilize the products at all. So it's the flavor that hooks them and gets them going. And just to take a minute to tell you that we have an epidemic in our county. I've been contacted by almost every school district. I've been contacted by parents, teachers, and principals, because they are finding that the students are using vaping products and e-cigarettes, the flavors, in school. They're very hard to detect or see the vapor from. And it's going into, I even got a call from one of our elementary schools. So we've got kids as young as 4th grade using them. And the concentration of nicotine in those is extremely high. So it promotes addiction. So just to read, those that currently use tobacco, an overwhelming majority use electronic smoking devices, which is 84.3%, in addition to 86.4% of youth tobacco users reporting using the flavored products. Okay, so I'm going to move on to underage tobacco sales. And let me turn my page here. This is from 2018, and these are violation rates. So 34.9% in tobacco and vape shops, the violations occurred. 25.3% convenience stores that do not sell gas, and 24.8% in small markets. Okay. So the next page, and we're getting to the end here, it has a graph, and I'd like to draw your attention to the tobacco retailer licensing graph, which shows that 181 jurisdictions in California have adopted tobacco retail licenses, and 30 have adopted flavored tobacco sales bans or restrictions. So that is occurring more and more. And then the very last page is a matrix of strong local tobacco retailer licensing. And that's current in California as of May 2019. And I do want to draw your attention to Kern County. If you would look at Kern. It shows, what it shows here is it shows when it was passed, the population, the fee that was charged, and who is in charge of, who's the designated administration. So in Kern County for Delano, which is probably a town or an area, it was law enforcement, but in some of the other cities, it was the health department. That's decided by whoever, writes the ordinance and how they work that out. Mendocino County, I think, is a good one to look at as well, which I think is on the third page. Yeah, Mendocino County has got tobacco retail license passed, and they've used law enforcement for one of the towns, they've used the health department, and they've used city officials. So that funding could be utilized however it was chosen. And then Sonoma County, trying to get some places that are close by here. And, okay. Sonoma County, so Healdsburg passed one in 2014. They use law enforcement. The town of Sonoma, they use law enforcement. You can see that the fees vary. From some places, the fees are much less than they are at others. Windsor, the fee is $350 a year, and they use the health department and city officials. I just wanted to also mention that similar matrices exist on towns and cities and counties that have passed just a flavor ban or just some of the other plugins that I talked about before. Have any questions?
I guess it's not a coincidence, the smokers in this county and our health statistics.
Not a coincidence at all. The price for the tobacco-related health costs for our county alone are $12 million a year annually. That can be directly correlated to tobacco use. So, like, those could be things like bronchus, different cancers, mouth cancers, and when we start talking about the e-cigarettes and vapes, because they're newer, first they thought they were safe, and now everything that they're finding as time goes by, and they are developing more science and data that they're very harmful to, and they're causing a lot of health problems. We don't know what it will hold in the future long term, but it's already causing a lot right now.
Councilman Purduck?
You know if the county health department and the county board are looking at an ordinance?
They're not looking at it right now. I've had conversations with county government, but...
Made this presentation?
Oh, I'd love to.
No, have you?
Have I? I've made similar presentations, but not probably for a year, but I believe that I'm going to be asked very soon to do so.
I hope so.
I think there might be interest for county-wide, but the reason that we chose the city of Clearlake was because when our plan was being written and we did we have to do community input, this was chosen to try to talk to and encourage or give information towards a tobacco retail license because of your plan to have a health element in your city plan.
Thank you.
Councilman Harris.
It seems reasonable that if somebody already has kind of a blueprint on this idea, and some of these cities have demographics that are similar to ours, not with the health issues, obviously, and obviously not with the smoking rate. It's shocking to me that we have such a profound smoking rate or tobacco use rate.
And these are self-reported.
Right.
Yeah.
This is people admitting to it. So this excluding those who don't admit to it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing to me. And yeah, I'd be pretty supportive of a concept that involves a structured plan here. And I think that would be, obviously useful. We have a lot of different templates to work from.
Yeah, and I can provide those. I can get samples for you of different kinds. We work with, different agencies that would help form one. A lot of times what happens with our colleagues is that, they'll say, well, get me Sonomas or get me so-and-sos because it's similar to us and I'm just going to use theirs. But there's also fill-in formats for all different kinds, depending on what it would be. And I'm also available for any technical assistance if you were to ask. I can come and I can provide data or information, anything that you might want.
Just seems to me that, given the statistics that we're seeing in front of us, that taking no action at all would be sad situations.
Well, yeah, one of the main things is to try to prevent youth uptake of utilizing tobacco products at a young age. And so one of the ways to do that is to have the strong tobacco retail license with a fine if they sell, or some kind of a, consequence if they sell. And as you see, a lot of those dropped in those other cities or counties because they knew, well, I can get popped for this, locally. There's not enforcement on the state level for that because they just can't. I mean.
Thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor Slotin?
I'm definitely in favor of an ordinance doing this, including vaping. It's a fast rising problem, and we need to, if we can do a little bit here at the city, we should definitely do it.
Set an
Councilman
example.
Purdock.
I'd like to ask for consensus of the council for staff to take this and bring it back.
Before you do that, even though it's under presentations,
I understand.
ask the public for some comment.
Oh, good idea.
You're going to take a consensus.
Okay.
Thank
Should
you.
I?
Thank you very much. If there are any public comments from the,
Greatly appreciate it. It's eye-opening. Thank you.
yes, Ms. Duke.
Well, being a nurse and having worked in acute care for many, many years and seeing the results of smoking, where's the education in the schools? You can try and regulate it. That'll help some. But to see the graphic images of what it does to the body, what it does to the lungs, where's the education in the schools? That's my question. I mean, the kids are kids. And people are going to do what they're going to do, and they're going to get it where they're going to get it, and maybe it's going to be impacted by a regulation, but where's the education in the school to show them what's going to happen? Graphic images.
I can actually attest to the fact that there is education in the schools regarding that, the overall
How far
effects.
down does it go, the education?
I wouldn't have details on it. I would just tell you that for sure that there's a lot of exposure. These days, compared to when I went to school, there's a lot of exposure to the what ifs and what could happen, what it does to your body. So I just want to let you know that there is a focused effort in the schools.
I hope so, because when I was in school, it wasn't until I was in college, actually, that you actually got good health education.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any other public comments? Okay, bringing it back. I think there is a consensus here that we'd like to see this on the agenda at a,
Duly noted.
pardon me?
Thank you, Mr. Flohr.
Yes. So, moving right along, we have a proclamation.
We have a,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
who would like?
Well, you didn't put it up till the last.
No, it's been up there.
Councilwoman Overton.
Okay, along with this, as I read their own documentations here, when we do bring this out, we also need to bring back the financial part of this, because it does state down here that these fees aren't going to cover any, so we need to know what the backup for our general fund and stuff is too. I just wanted to bring that to the attention so that we have all of it when it comes back.
Thank you, Councilwoman Overton. Is there anyone else? Okay, so we're going to move on now to a proclamation. Ms. Watson, can you step up to the podium? And any... Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender Pride Month, June of 2019. And I want to read the proclamation of the Clearlake City Council, or City of Clearlake, actually. Whereas our nation was founded on the principle of equal rights for all people, but the fulfillment of this promise has been long in coming for many Americans. Some of the most inspiring moments in our history have arisen from various civil rights movements that have brought one group after another from the margins to the mainstream of American society. And whereas in the movement towards equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender LGBT people historic turning point occurred on June 28th of 1969 in New York City with the onset of the Stonewall riots. During these riots, LGBT citizens rose up and resisted police harassment that arose out of discriminatory criminal laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. In the 4 decades since, civil rights for the LGBT people have grown substantially, and LGBT pride celebrations have taken place around the country every June to commemorate the beginning of the Stonewall riots. And whereas California has been a leader in advancing the civil rights of its LGBT citizens, and while further progress is needed, it is important to recognize and celebrate the substantial gains that have been achieved. Now therefore, the City Council of the City of Clear Lake does hereby proclaim June 2019 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Pride Month in Clear Lake, and call upon its citizens to eliminate prejudice everywhere it exists and celebrate the diversity of our community. Dated this 13th day of June 2019 and signed by me, Mayor of Clear Lake. Diane, I'd like to present this to you, and if there's, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, I'd love to.
Diane is a very good friend. We were on the fire board together for a number of years, and she's a very influential lady. So, go ahead.
Give this to Denise here, my friend who's taking the picture.
Gotcha. Can I get one?
Yes.
Thank you.
I've always been proud of this community. I've been involved with the fire department for about 17 years, worked with him and Mr. Purdock and also Mr. Harris. Very proud of the community, and I guess I'm the token gay today, and I'm cool with that.
And so are we.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, guys. And if you don't mind, I got to go pack for Tahoe, so.
You're excused. Okay. Well, I think I actually jumped the public comment too, didn't I?
You did, but that's okay.
I can move those things around. I like to mix it up. So now we'll move on to our consent agenda. Are there any changes? Council like to pull anything, or? Not this time. No, that's good. So I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
All in favor?
We do need to ask for public comment.
But I just did that. Is there any public comment with regard to any items on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. And now I will ask for a motion.
And again, I'll give you one. Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passed. Okay, now we're going to move on to item 9. Public hearing for adoption of the appropriations limit, GAN limit for fiscal year 2019-20 and designating the formula to be used for calculation of the same. Mr. Flora?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So we already had our budget workshop and discussed the proposed budget for 1920, but this first item is a resolution. This is a legal requirement of the city each year, as well as counties and other special districts, to adopt annual appropriations limit. And this is based on population information and per capita personal income calculations that are provided by the State Department of Finance to us. And so you have the information here in your packet with a resolution. And currently the city's appropriations are well below the appropriation limit set forth herein. So if you have any questions, I'll try to address them.
Okay. Does council have any questions to begin with?
Nope.
I'll go out to the public. Are there any public comments with regard to item 9, appropriations limit? Seeing none, I bring it back to council. Again, any comments, any questions? Then I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve resolution number 2019-25, resolution of the City Council for the City of Clearlake adopting the appropriation limits for fiscal year 2019-2020 and designated the formula to be used for the calculation of the same.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Mayor Slotin, second by Councilman Harris. Does that require roll call or, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Seeing none, motion passes. Moving on to item 10, public hearing to consider adoption of the City of Clear Lake's budget for fiscal year 2019-20. Again, Mr. Flora.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we, over the last couple hours, had a budget workshop where we reviewed the proposed budget. At this time, I'm not aware of any direction for changes in that budget from the council, but this would be your opportunity to either, one, adopt Resolution 2019-26 adopting this year's budget, or you could provide direction to staff to make amendments to the budget, and we would bring this back for final adoption on June 26th. The key being that we need to adopt our budget prior to July 1st. So if there's any specific questions about sections of the budget from either the council or the public, would try to address those.
Any questions from council? Are there any I'm sorry?
I have none, that's it.
Are there any questions from the public or any comments from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Any?
Just a quick comment, if I could, Mr. Mayor. Just when there's a public hearing item like this in a section, this is just a formality, but you should open the public hearing and then have staff do.
Public.
And when public is done, then close it.
Right,
and then
okay. So seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Is that okay? Now, Councilman Harris.
So exciting to see the city budget come together, and I appreciate the efforts on the city staff's behalf putting together the budget. And our finance director, unfortunately, she's not here, but I appreciate the efforts there as well. And I'm very excited about the idea of seeing some of these things come to fruition on the budget for the next year, particularly Austin's Park. I think it's really, that time is overdue. I can't wait to see our parks improve. So I appreciate it very much with the effort it was put in.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
Again, great budget. What I really like is the paying down some of the unfunded liability. Now, that's a big item for me. It will save us in the future tons of money, so I like to see that. Thank you for doing that.
Councilwoman Overton.
The presentation that you presented really explains things a little better than somebody looking at just the general public that looks at a budget. Is there a way we can make that public, put it on our website or something? Because I think that really breaks it down, makes it more understandable so people can really see like the rows that we're doing. And when you look at this budget, it doesn't really show that, and it's a lot to look at. So I really like the presentation, and I think that would be nice if we had it on our website.
Yes, and I would just add, you'll recall that the council approved purchasing OpenGov software, and this year we built our budget in that platform, which was a big step forward for us, made things a lot better. I mean, we learned some things. There's definitely some things that we'll do differently next year and how we have it set up, but we had some kind of formatting issues on the back end with the document that we'll clean up for the final adopted version. But one of the key pieces of that is the transparency side of it. And so now that we have this bill, if the council goes ahead and improves that, there's going to be a number of things that both you and the public will see as far as better access and communication of our both financial and non-financial information. We were just talking about animal control statistics the other day as being one thing that we can utilize this platform for. So in the near term, certainly we'll add the presentation to the website so the public can access that. But I'm really excited about the things to come. There's, because of the timeline and making sure we had this set up and it was ready to go for today, essentially, there's some things like including performance metrics related to our strategic plan, which we can track against our financial data and that sort of stuff that we've kind of delayed implementing. But there's going to be a lot of stuff over the summer that you'll see that I think you'll be very pleased with on that, including Measure V information and that type of thing. So.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. I also very much appreciate it. I love the technology that you bring to the presentations. It makes very dry subject matter much more understandable and helps a lot, I think, in our understanding of it and ability to get through it quickly and be able to understand it. So I do appreciate that. Are there any other comments?
Very few of you slept through it this year, so that's...
No. Well, you kept kicking me under the table. And, at any rate, I will entertain a motion. I'm sorry? I thought we did open it up, but you're right.
Open and closed.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 2019-26, adopting the fiscal year 2019-2020 City of Clearlake budget.
Okay, there's been a motion by Councilman Harris and a second by Councilwoman Overton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call. Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Item 11, public hearing to consider adoption of the City of Clear Lake's fee schedule for fiscal year 2019-2020. Again, Mr. Flora?
Yes. So we also mentioned this during the workshop, but it's the practice of Clear Lake City Council to adopt the fee schedule every year as part of the budget process. There is only a few changes this year. The one addition is to add a fee of $50 for after-hours emergency lockout at Highlands on the Lake, which is the affordable housing property owned by the city at the request of Administrative Services Department. And then I also wanted to point out, as we discussed earlier, that when this was initially distributed, the fee schedule did not include some changes that were done by ordinance to parking fees. And so we just want to make sure it's clear that if the council chooses to adopt the fee schedule, that it does include those amendments that are consistent with existing municipal code.
Okay. Any questions from?
Chief White once had something.
I just want to clarify in the interest of transparency, there was one change regarding the code enforcement hearing fee, and it was to cover costs, that there was an increase. So just to clarify that in the resolution, that if we could verbally amend it just to state that there are the police changes within there. The other ones have to do with the parking fines.
Okay. Vice Mayor Sloden?
Great. One of these days, I hope to see development fees in here.
Yes, that project is ongoing, and it took a bit of a backseat for the housing element project, but now those two main priorities are the zoning ordinance update and the development impact fees, so I expect to get both of them moving again now.
All right, I will open this up to a public hearing. Are there any comments from the public? Mrs. Mangori?
Joan Mangori, 14107 Lakeshore Drive. I was just enjoying all this until you mentioned the parking fees and the penalties. When we did a study here a number of years ago, I think Phil was on the committee, the bike lanes that got installed were part of an entire project that included parking and improve. It was all to, we were going to have diagonal parking on one side and then the bike lanes, and it was all a nice plan. All of a sudden, the bike lanes went in and wiped out 168 parking spaces. And so I would hope that even though you're levying parking fees, that until we get a parking plan or the curb gutter and sidewalk on Lakeshore or something that can help us in our downtown area, we shouldn't be giving traffic parking fines to people parking in those bike lanes that are used by people that don't seem to know how to even ride their bikes. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mingori. Any other public comments? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Are there any more discussion?
Sorry, I just want to clarify one more thing. I was reviewing my notes. There is also, too, in there, the new red tagged entry fee for the permit in order to enter the red tagged properties, which was another thing that we had brought back during code adoption last year. So that sets forth that fee, which is $25 for us to process.
And that is another amendment that you want to the...
It's already in there. I think if we just clarify that in the resolution that we're also adopting the changes from police relative to police and the code enforcement.
Okay. Any more?
I just want, but those fees you've already included in this packet, right?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
So we don't need to amend that?
We don't need to amend it.
No, it's just the resolution references in there just one change for, I think, Administrative Services Department, when the reality is there's changes from police.
Okay, well, I'd like to make the motion to accept the resolution number 2019-27.
I had a thing up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Last minute question.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, one of the parking fees that's on here that kind of stands out to me is that parked with person locked in vehicle. And I would assume that would be like a child or something to the, is that what we're discussing there with that particular?
Whoops. There are specific requirements for that violation.
And I would assume that would also accompany another violation that would be child endangerment or something of that sort, right?
Yeah, if it met those requirements, it's certainly.
It's only a $145 fee. And if I'm looking at some of the things on here as far as fees are related, it seems to me that that would be one of those things that would be pretty high up on the standard scale. It's not locking children in. I just see it. I see it, so it's a frustrating thing to see that happening, but I would like to see that if we were to discuss that in the future, maybe making that substantial. Also, I don't see on here, and I looked at maybe I missed it, is a animal locked in a vehicle.
The animal locked in the vehicle is currently addressed by administrative penalties, so it's $100. We've issued numerous of those for the first offense.
But it's not in one of these.
Correct. It's actually incorporated in the municipal code itself. It's not under this.
Okay. So another thing I would mention that probably should increase substantially with the hot temperatures we have. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I'll go back. Sorry about that. Councilmember Harris. I'd like to accept the resolution number 2019-27, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clearlake adopting the schedule fees and also accepting, per what the chief has also on his schedules for the police, fiscal year 2019 and 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made by Councilwoman Overton and seconded by Councilman Purdock. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes. Okay, moving right along here. We're at item 12, public hearing to consider adoption of ordinance number 230-2019 requiring registration of vacant, abandoned, or foreclosed commercial buildings. Is that any of you, Mr. Valora?
I'll just do a very brief introduction. So this is something that staff had worked on for a period of time. Initially, the draft ordinance included all vacant buildings in the city, residential and commercial. 50% of the housing in Clearlake is, sorry, I've got my
We're on commercial
my
now.
ordinances mixed up. But anyway, we have a large number of them. We felt like the scope of that was somewhat tenuous, and it was important to focus on high visibility areas. And so we met and decided to focus on commercial buildings initially for this type of ordinance. And so Chief White has taken the lead on that, and he will introduce and explain the item for you.
Chief White.
Thank you. Good evening again, Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. Tonight we're here to present the vacant commercial property ordinance, and if we could unblink the TV. So as you all are likely aware, there are numerous buildings within the city, commercial buildings that are vacant, and these things can have a significant impact on the community and do have an impact. Some things that they impact are blight within the community. They can be the cause of blight and the contribute to the spread of blight. They depress economic development and property values. They can serve as attractive nuisances, both for animals getting inside the abandoned structures, but also too for people congregating around there and engaging in criminal activity and nuisance type behavior. They can also be hazardous, both to the public, just in their general state that they're in, but also too when first responders and or code enforcement personnel have to go to those buildings and conduct inspections, respond to fires, and assist a member of the public who maybe got injured in one of those locations. And obviously they impact the neighborhoods. The city doesn't have distinctly defined commercial areas, so they abut right up against residential areas and sometimes have residences mixed within. So it can negatively impact those neighborhoods. So what we are proposing is a registration program. So what would happen is that if a building meets the definition that's set forth in the code, which would mean that it's vacant for 30 days continuous, or a notice of default was filed, then following that period, they become subject to registration. They would have 10 days to begin to complete the registration process. The registration process requires them to submit certain information and pay a fee for the registration. That information, without going into all the details, generally provides contact information for the owner so we can reach them. Oftentimes these places include out-of-town property owners and or corporations, et cetera, that are difficult to get a hold of when there's problems that occur at the property. And so this provides us with up-to-date information. It imposes or requires them to submit information on how the property is secured and how they're preventing unauthorized entry into the property. Requires a statement of intent, which explains what's their expected period of vacancy, what kind of plans do they have for the property, are they going to rehabilitate it, are they going to demolish it, sell it, et cetera. It also requires an inspection of the property by an approved individual or firm, much like you would have a home inspection. So it's an approved third party who would go in and inspect the interior and exterior, and they would attest to the condition of the property at that time. Once again, that way we know what kind of issues may exist there from a life safety perspective, but also too from a public nuisance perspective. It also requires submission of contact information for the person or firm that's going to be responsible for doing the inspections and maintenance of the property on an ongoing basis, which we'll talk a little bit more here in a second. The fee, the way it works out is there's initial registration fee. It's a $100 fee and then $12.50 a month prorated through July 1st. So essentially for an entire year, you're looking at a $250 fee for registration. There are two penalties that are set forth that are significant to both deter violations and encourage compliance. That is that if an enforcement officer gives notice to somebody who should have registered the building and they fail to do so after receiving that notice that tells them to register, then they'd be subject to a fine of $500 for the first violation, and then every 30 days they could be fined a $1,000 fine for continuing to maintain the property while it's unregistered. The ordinance imposes certain requirements, the first one being signage. So within every property that's subject to registration under this, they have to post a sign that would meet the city standards that would provide the name and phone number of the owner and or the agent that's responsible for the inspections. And then for foreclosure information, they have to provide the information of the lender. There would also be a requirement for liability insurance. For vacant buildings, the general insurance doesn't cover things that happen there, so people get injured, first responders go there, stuff happens, the place burned down, et cetera. Generally speaking, for commercial buildings, once they become vacant for a period of time, their regular insurance isn't going to kick in. So this would require that they submit evidence of vacant building insurance. There is a provision in there that if there's some sort of extenuating circumstance as to why they couldn't get insurance for that, and it would be in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare, then the city manager could approve an exception to that policy. It requires that the building is secured from all trespassers in accordance with provisions of the ordinance, and that all doors, windows, et cetera, are secured. We also have the option at the enforcement official's discretion to require lighting at all the entrances and exits. One of the issues when you look at vacant buildings, and particularly groups of vacant buildings, is the attractant for criminal behavior, and just safety with going by occurs because power gets shut off, they're not taking care of it, and all of a sudden you have people sleeping in alcoves, hanging out there, doing other sorts of things. And again, when you look at the impact on neighboring businesses that are taking care of their property, are renting them out, are using them, et cetera, this helps to reduce that impact. There are also some other discretionary things that they can require based upon the circumstances. There are monthly inspections required after the initial inspection. These can be handled by the owner or their agent. They don't need to use a authorized third party to do that. They are required to submit evidence of their inspection, which would be a simple form that they would fill out, and then photographs of the property. We are trying to make this ordinance flexible for those that are being cooperative, are maintaining their property, are actively monitoring their property. So after they complete a period of time of showing compliance, then they can petition to be moved to a quarterly inspection program, so they wouldn't be required to do the monthly reports. The ordinance does generally prohibit vacant commercial buildings beyond 30 days, with two exceptions. The first exception is that they have active permits for building demolition, destruction, et cetera, rehabilitation, and that they are progressing diligently within that. The other exception would be is that if their property complies with the code, including the requirements of this ordinance, and it's either held out for sale or for lease, or if they choose not to do that, that they're actively maintaining it and monitoring it in accordance with this. So it doesn't necessarily require that they lease it out, et cetera, but it does require that they maintain it in accordance with the code. There are two provisions in here relative to nuisance, vacant nuisance properties. So the first one is the monitoring fee. So this would impose that if a property that's subject to registration receives 3 administrative citations within a 12-month period, then they'd be placed on a monitoring program and deemed a nuisance, continuing nuisance property. They'd be assessed a fee of $250 a month for a monitoring fee. If they receive an administrative citation, they'd be subject to a $50 response fee. So essentially, if you're subject to registration and you get a violation, it's a penalty enhancement for not complying with the code. There's also a boarding permit. So our city code doesn't really have specific requirements regarding boarded buildings. This does not address all boarded buildings in the city. It addresses commercial boarded buildings that fall within the ordinance. It would require that they have a permit. There's a $150 permit fee, which would include an inspection to make sure that it complies with the requirements. The ordinance sets forth standards. Specifically, it establishes security methods for these buildings. So what type of plywood, how it's attached to the building, et cetera. We've had issues with vacant commercial buildings where they boarded up the building, they've used old plywood, et cetera, that's falling apart. It poses a hazard and it doesn't accomplish the original goal. Notably, it also requires that they would paint those boards. So they would be painted in an earthy type tone color or something that's compatible with the building. There are requirements for life safety. One of them includes termination of utilities and capping the sewer to prevent the accumulation of hazardous gases. There is an exception for the utilities if they have an alarm system, et cetera, that they can keep that on. There's also a requirement that for a boarded building that they have to clear the interior for public safety, so they would not be allowed to have junk, et cetera, accumulated inside there. That's really important, primarily for firefighters trying to fight a fire where you have smoke, et cetera, that could occur in one of these, but also too if police had to enter in the building or other code enforcement personnel. Regarding the boarding, it generally imposes a time limitation regarding the process, so there's kind of a tiered approach, but the time window on the long side is 6 months, but there is a provision for good cause where we could extend it beyond that. The idea being that boarding a building is not a long-term solution for maintaining that particular property. Oops. So at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilman Harris.
Well, we know that this is a significant ongoing issue in our community. I'm just curious about a couple of things. Do we have any idea how many commercial buildings have been identified as being affected by this ordinance immediately?
So I don't have the exact number. I would say there's probably 5 or 6 that jump out as immediate violations.
Right, I'm
that would be
thinking of those in my mind as well. But I mean, I have a feeling since this affects all commercial buildings throughout the city, there's probably a lot more than are just on our main thoroughfare. So I just was curious if we had a kind of a rally count as to what we're looking at for an effect, and if we go forward with this ordinance, how soon would we move forward with some heavy enforcement?
So what would happen is that if the ordinance goes through tonight, it would come back for the adoption, and then 30 days later it would take effect, and the ordinance specifies that for buildings that would be subject to registration when the ordinance comes into effect, they'd have 10 days from that adoption to comply. But you'll also note that we have a process in there where we would go out and actually give notification to them. So you're probably talking realistically within 30 days after the adoption that you would start seeing some changes with those that are going to comply. Obviously, those that aren't going to comply, we're going to have to go through that process to urge them to comply.
But potentially, by the end of the year, we could see some of these buildings taking action.
Yeah, so some of the research that I did in looking at this was that actually California is kind of behind the times. If you go back east, there's many states that have these adopted through communities that face issues just like us. They found places that were literally vacant for well over a decade, that when an ordinance like this went into place, suddenly the property owners took action and began to rehabilitate the building or cause it to transfer, et cetera. So it's been largely successful within that.
Thank you so much for your efforts on this.
Yes, Chief White, back to the beginning, the initial registration fee, did I misread that? I thought it said $500. Reading in here, it's $100 plus $12.50 a month, which I think adds up to the $250.
Yes, you're correct. The $250 would be an entire year of registration. The $500 is that if we give notification to say, hey, we believe your building's been vacant beyond the 30-day period and that 10-day window, so say 40 days, that's the penalty for not complying with our order to register.
Okay. Any other questions from council?
If I could just briefly add before you move on, I mean, Chief White did a lot of research and work on this. It's greatly appreciated. He pulled together the best pieces of a lot of different ordinances for what's before you tonight. We feel like that, I don't think it's any surprise to you, but the focus on image that we have and achieving the goals that are in the council's strategic plan, this is a critical piece of changing the trajectory of the image of this community, and we hope the council supports it.
I don't think you get any argument there.
No, love it. None.
Vice Mayor Slade.
I am excited about this. I think it's, as some of you might know, we have invested some money in this community, and I don't want to, it will give an incentive to other people to either do something with it or sell it, and hopefully a new buyer will beautify the thing. And it is obviously, two of our main goals is to make this Clearlake a visible, cleaner city, and also make Clearlake a statistically safer city by doing this. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Chief White. I want to open this up now to public hearing. And here comes Mrs. Mengori again.
Before somebody points out the mistake, my presentation showed $250 for the monthly monitoring. It's $200, so $50 discount.
Okay.
I talked to Chief White, Joe Mingori, 14107 Lakeshore Drive. I talked to Chief White this morning, and I want to thank him. He did it's a killer of an ordinance. Sadly, Chamber, there's no business people here, and other than myself. And I would think if I was a property owner on Lakeshore Drive, I would be agreeing with you, but sad. I've been on every Lakeshore Drive committee since 1983. And we have yet to see our government implement any of our plans by the business owners and the property owners. And this ordinance, as well it is good, I can tell you there's business owners suffering out there. They can't rent their properties, they can't renovate them, they can't get decent tenants when they do. And I would just like, even though the ordinance is great, the fee structures, I feel, for our community is outrageous. I would like to see our government working with our business owners. I do believe we have some blighted buildings that need to be addressed, and I understand where we need to be able to encourage them to move forward, to take the boarded buildings and the burned out buildings and the ones that, like what happened to Wyzetas when the transients get in. I totally agree with the ordinance and what it's doing, but I'm upset that we have had so many committee meetings, and I brought up the parking, and that was a good example. We met for a solid, I would say, a year on the lakeshore design with the curb gutter and sidewalk, with proper parking, and the bike lanes. The only thing you implemented was the bike lanes, which took away all the parking spaces, which killed more of our businesses. I have one of those businesses, a property that I can't renovate to a commercial from a residential because I don't have 4 parking spaces. So I know other business owners that would love to renovate their properties, but they've been waiting for things to happen from you guys. And then all of a sudden, we've got these horrible fees. And I, believe me, because I've had my share of bad neighbors, I agree with an ordinance that will clean up our town. I'm 100% in favor of it. I just wish that our business community, the chamber, had invited people here to speak other than myself. So I commend you. It's well written. I thank you guys for wanting to clean up the town, but I do wish that we would have included some input from some of the property owners that this is really, truly going to affect. And that's it. Thank you.
Mrs. Mingori, I do have one question. Are you talking about just the fees that you're concerned with, or are you talking about the registration fee or specifically?
The registration fee and then the monthly fee afterwards, to me, is outrageous. I'm actually going to come down to the city tomorrow. My concern is, and I talked to Chief White about this, I purchased the property just south of me because it was a slum landlord. And when it went into for sale, I had owned the commercial property between my house and it. And between all the bullet shootings from the bad property on the other side of it, we ended up selling to them to get the cash to buy that resort. And then I proceeded to bulldoze most of the cabins out because I thought if I ever lost it, I didn't want it to become a slum like it was. So we kept the main house, but it was gutted. And so we've been using it for our personal storage because I have no garage. I went to the city last year to convert it like our house with a commercial downstairs, a residential upstairs. In my particular situation, it's zone commercial, but it's residential. It's been residential for years. So I can't get normal conventional loaning without going a commercial rate. Like in my house, I have both commercial and residential, and it's non-conforming, so I pay an additional penalty because it's a non-conventional use, because it's deemed residential in a commercial district. So that was one of the things my husband met with Alan and was on this committee to help clean up the zoning on Lakeshore Drive. We've had one meeting in a year. So that type of thing is what I'm getting at. So what I'm looking at now is I'm going to come down to the city to find out about merging my 3 properties together. And then I will solve my issue because it's going to be all one property. You're going to lose out on tax dollars when I do that. However, it deems another problem. I've talked to my insurance agent. I may not be able to do it. They may drop me. Because when I changed my insurance to include it as part of my homeowners, because it's not commercial, they've told me that Lake County with insurance don't touch it. And so right now, I'm waiting to hear back from my agent who was putting a feeler out. If I do this, I might lose my insurance. So that's what I'm trying to share with you. I mean, it's hard enough, like myself and my husband, I know other business people that would love to renovate their properties and get things going. But there's obstacles like this in our way that I would like to see. You know, I actually went to the town of Dublin before it cleaned up with the idea of doing the Main Street program like they had done, like Lakeport has been looking at. I have gone out, we've taken pictures of towns with bike lanes and parking. So I'm serious. We want to see this community cleaned up. I've been here all my life. I don't want to see what's happened happen here. I want it back like it was in the 50s when you couldn't hardly, you remember when you could hardly cross the street without it, you know. But, so I know what you're talking about, and then we're all in favor of anything that's going to help us. But I would like to see it also be a partnership and not just assessing penalties. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Joan. State your name, please.
Denise Lucelo, president of the Clearlake Chamber, also business owner. And I must say, I just found out about this myself a day ago. So sorry, Ms. Mingori, that you didn't hear from me. But with that, you all know sitting up there how hard it is to get anyone to comply and conform and do what they're just supposed to do as a good neighbor, let alone people that purchase buildings that they don't do anything with. They buy a commercial property thinking it's going to be worth more money and thinking, oh, I'll just sit on it, and then we end up with what we have. I think that's what this ordinance more is meant for. That's the way I'm taking it. Now, I think it's very needed. What you do with the fees, that's up to you. But in my mind, this is the first step of cleaning up our city, both for the chamber and for businesses, because we all need it to prosper, and we need it to be safe, and we need everything along those lines to make that happen. So I was asked by the chamber board to come speak, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But I would be caring a lot about what happens. And I am in favor of an ordinance, but again, I do feel for business owners that are in the position like the Mingoris or someone like that. But when I read this ordinance, to me what stood out was vacant buildings just being sat on, demolished. I can think of ones that have been vacant my whole life. I mean, those people are the ones we want to kick in the butt, because that's not what we want in our community. So, thank you.
Mrs. Lissalot, do you think that other chamber members would have something substantive to bring to the council if we were to carry this over?
Well, if you were to carry it over, yes. We did discuss it at the board meeting last night briefly. I could try to send out something to the membership and see if they get any input. I wouldn't want you to hold any decisions based on that, though.
Okay. Thank you. Got the whole Thursday morning breakfast crowd coming up here.
No. 4649 West 40th Street, Cheryl Ullman. I'm also excited just to be seeing that we're trying to clean up the blight that is what everybody's impression is when they drive into town. I think that makes a big difference. I'm excited to hopefully move it into the residential zone after we learn what's going on here. But I also have some concerns a little bit, and that's, we've lost a lot of restaurants and shops. I've been here over 20 years, and there's just not even the services available to us as residents that used to be. So I think we really need to be trying to look at whatever we can do to have this also encourage growth, or actually getting our downtown or our main street back together on Lakeshore Drive. The thing I look at is process. Having done a purchase where I had to wait time, it was an easy year before I had the opportunity to have full ownership in a property. And I'm thinking if anybody's going into purchasing off of the tax rolls, I don't know how many of these properties may be there. Ownership could be a really big issue for you, and I don't know how you plan to address that when you don't have a clear owner of property. Is that something that you've taken into consideration that needs to be in that? The other thing is you're looking at vacant businesses, because I've seen businesses close. I see businesses that have for sale, for lease signs. I would hope that there's a clear process of your timing so that some of these penalties are not incurred to the same level as those that are simply vacant and allowed to just continue to deteriorate. So I know that looking at a lot of our abatement issues in the past without that clear process, we get into a lot of, oh, well, this guy gets that and this guy gets this, and we end up with something that's really mushy. So I would really like to see that more detailed for your code enforcement or those people in administration processing that. What is it that you're going to do where people are actively trying to lease a building and we just don't have owners, or not owners, the owners cannot lease their buildings. What is it that we're needing to do to recognize that if they're keeping them in good shape, and maybe the fine is going to, or the fees are less because of that. That's more attainable or supportive to our community and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ullman. Ms. McCarrick.
Erin McCarrick, 3650 Locust Street, Clearlake. I actually had a question. So thanks, Chief White, for bringing this up, because it's a really neat idea. And I was wondering, what was the impetus for it? How did it come under your purview as the Chief of Police to do this initiative?
So the Code Enforcement Bureau falls under the Police Department. As a city manager, I mentioned earlier that there was a move internally within the city to come up with some sort of vacant property registration. And so I took it and tailored it down to this, because this is one of our greatest struggles right now.
Do you guys see a lot of health issues with the transient population with the vacant buildings?
There's some with it, but primarily the issues are with the blight that they cause.
Would there be are there any other programs across the country, or would it be possible if somebody is having a for lease or sale and they can't find a tenant I have a couple nonprofits that are looking for spaces that maybe they could take it over in the meantime, because they would be good tenants if they were good tenants. Is that an option?
It'd be between them and the property owner. Just to clarify, there's not a requirement that you sell or lease the property out or rent it out. The requirement is that if it's going to be vacant, you need to comply with the ordinance. So as long as you're complying with the ordinance, taking care of the property, you have the signage posted and all that, you could theoretically leave it vacant for a long period of time. We understand that part of it. However, if you're choosing not to lease it and violated and everything else, then you're going to run afoul of the ordinance. And that's where the penalties are going to come into place. If you're a well-managing property owner, do everything required under here, your fee is the registration fee.
Which is the $250?
Correct.
Okay. I support this.
Any other public comment? Seeing none, I close the public hearing portion of this and bring it back to council.
Make a motion to hold the public.
Wait a minute. Are there any comments from anyone else? Okay. I do have some concerns on the fee part of it. I have no concerns about the penalties. I think we need those, but as Ms. Mingori has pointed out, I think it would seem to me that our idea is to encourage people to register. And it seems to me by charging them a monthly fee that we're actually penalizing them for registering. So I'd like us to at least look at that part of it, consider perhaps reducing that. Is the purpose of the fee to recover costs?
Yeah, could I briefly respond about the fee issue?
Sure.
So I did a significant amount of research across the United States and within our state to see about fees. And as they brought up, it is important that the fee is low because you want compliance. That's what we want to encourage. The numbers range upwards of over $500. Many jurisdictions require where it's every 6 months that they have to register and pay the fee. To be clear, the monthly portion is to determine a proration of the initial registration because we want them all to renew on the same date versus renewing all throughout the year and we have to chase it around. That was a recommendation from the city attorney's office. In terms of the fee amount, and I'll let the city attorney attest to this, but in discussing with his colleague, you could redline the ordinance tonight and you could lower the amount on there if you wanted to. We are already going to be, all these properties, to be clear, we are already upside down with our responses. So it's not going to get incredibly worse. We would like more people to comply. So if the council believes that a lower amount would be appropriate, that's not an obstacle. Our primary point is that the penalties need to remain stiff so that way people will cooperate and that we have a tool to encourage compliance with it. The registration fee we have flexibility on. We just need to ensure that the proration's in there so we can calculate for them to all renew on the same date.
Okay. Councilman Overton, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I agree. I think that maybe we should lower at least the $100 registration fee, to something like you said. I want them to be able to register and know, and the $12.50 a month. Well, that's not really that much, but
I think the annual fee is $250. Is that correct?
That's $100 plus the $12.50 a month, right?
Correct. So if you registered it July 1st, then it's going to be $250 because it's calculating out. However, if you registered, in May, it charges the initial amount to cover the cost recovery, and then get you up to July 1st. Then you'd renew again. So you have flexibility on if you want to make it lower.
Right. Yeah.
All right,
Council, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Can I make a comment? So I agree with Chief White that, it's going to be subsidized by the general fund to operate this program if the fee's lowered. We're probably already subsidizing it somewhat, but it's still manageable because it's focused on commercial properties. But as a property owner, a $250 annual fee seems like a very small cost of owning that property, and most costs associated with property ownership are significantly higher than that.
Mr. Council?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to head with my commentary. I think something we need to really keep straight here is we're not focusing on the residential properties. We're focusing on commercial properties. And if somebody comes into our city and they buy a piece of property and they spend $300,000, $400,000, whatever they spend on that piece of property, maybe less, a lot less sometimes, but whatever, they're making an investment. They're making a choice to purchase that property for an investment purpose or some other purpose. And this will be one of those associated things they're going to have to address. And I just think that the idea behind this and the format behind this strengthens our ability to enforce this and gives us a small amount of money in a coffer. Also, this whole process, unfortunately, it could affect some people that, we're that are not creating the blight. But unless I'm mistaken, you also, Chief White, had in here an appeals process for somebody that's been deemed a vacant building or...
What they could appeal is the determination of whether they fall under the ordinance. The exception piece is that they're allowed to remain vacant longer than 30 days, provided that they actively maintain the property in accordance with the ordinance and meet all the requirements. They would still be subject to registration, so that's kind of the catch-all. If you stay vacant beyond 30 days in your commercial building, you are going to be subject to the registration, but all the fines and everything else, as long as you don't violate it, that doesn't come into play.
Right, so it'd be $250 each year, or $250 for the first year, and then $1250 a month from then on?
No, it's $250 per. It's essentially $250 per year, but the first year it's prorated, so that way everybody renews on July 1st.
And now I'm understanding. Okay,
Trying to
it
get
breaks
it
it
to
up.
fiscal
Okay, so
year.
So yeah, so $250 for the entire year.
If I could too, on that point, I'm looking at it. It says the fee for the first annual renewal shall be $250, but it doesn't say every year after that. So I would just ask that if you approve it, and for each year thereafter, just include that language in there, so it's clear it's $250.
So we're not stuck at 1 year.
This is on the.
So again, back to my initial comment here, I can't help but to feel like that if you're making a potential investment in a commercial building, commercial property, there should be other associated responsibilities, and I think that's exactly what we've been dealing with on our thoroughfare, is that we have people that are investing for a financial gain. Their concept is financial gain, but they're giving no concern to the citizens that live in our community. I think we need to focus our efforts and our attention on doing everything we can to benefit the citizens of our community.
Councilman Purdock.
I want to echo Councilman Harris's comments. We've had too many properties that have sat vacant and are just continuing to deteriorate for 20, 30 years. And that has to change, and this ordinance is the mechanism for doing that. But I also want to thank Mrs. McGorry for coming up and speaking her mind as far as the issues, and I don't want to get too far off the rails as far as point of order, but we have had multiple committees to discuss the Lakeshore Drive corridor, and we've come up with plans, and those plans sit on shelves and collect dust. And I know that we have hurt several in our business community because we put in a bike lane that blocked off the only 2 or 3 parking spots that they had. So I really would like to encourage staff, if we could revisit that and see the impacts on our commercial businesses by the implementation of that bike lane, absent the other conditions that we also discussed, because I was a part of that corridor plan. We did part of it. We didn't do the whole thing. And we hurt our people by doing that. But I do support this ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, maybe it would be appropriate for me to briefly respond to Mr. Purdock and Mrs. McGorry's comments on that. So staff certainly agree with that, and one of the priorities that we are working on is working on curb, gutter, and sidewalk along that area. So we weren't aware until very recently that the detailed plans and construction documents were actually created for the entire Lakeshore corridor. We do have those. We're actively pursuing funding and looking to prioritize initially between Austin Park and Highlands Park, but we feel like there is funding available, and we're actively pursuing that. And in addition, we understand that our zoning ordinance is overly restrictive for parking, particularly in the downtown area. Our zoning ordinance update that we're working on revises some of those parking limitations, but what I've told additional property owners who are looking to develop their properties, we will get as creative as necessary to address parking issues in order to accommodate development along that corridor. So anyone who is interested in doing that should come and talk to staff about it.
Excellent point. Thank you, Mr. Flora.
Thank you, Mr. Flora. Well, it seems the consensus is to move forward tonight on this, so
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion, hold public Is that what you're after?
I mean, yeah, I was going to finish my sentence.
Oh, I'm
but,
sorry, go ahead.
I will entertain a motion.
Okay, perfect.
Now?
Hold a public hearing, first reading, ordinance number 230-2019, an ordinance adding a new section 9-5 to the Clearlake Municipal Code related to the vacant commercial buildings and the building of buildings, read by title only and set a second reading for June 27, 2019. An ordinance adding the new section 9-5 to the Clearlake Municipal Code related to the vacant commercial buildings. It just reads it again.
Including the language?
Yes, including the language.
Including the language identified by the deputy city attorney.
Right, I'm sorry.
related to
Yes,
9-543.
extending it to not just 1 year, but to multiple years for the fee.
All right, the motion has been made. Is there a second? Motion's been made by Councilman Harris and seconded by Vice Mayor Slotin. I think we do need a roll call on this. Do we? No? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to item 13. Approval of a 2-year agreement between the County of Lake, City of Lakeport, and City of Clear Lake for support of Lake County PEG TV. Do you want to handle that?
That's me, Mayor Kramer. I'll be brief. I think most of you are familiar with PEG TV and its responsibilities. The cities, I think initially the channel started here with the City of Clear Lake. But last year there was a 1-year agreement put together. There was some question about whether the county was going to continue funding the program. But at this point, I understand that they are willing to continue doing it, and so they took the lead on preparing a new agreement for 2 years. So we're bringing this forward now. We are the first entity to bring it forward for approval, and I did want to clarify that I was told that this had been reviewed by the PEG board, and it sounds like it wasn't. So I did meet with Ed Roby, who was chair of the PEG board, and we reviewed this, and there was the performance measures that I have outlined here in the staff report are something that's a little bit new. But we feel like, as the 3 government entities, at the staff level at least, that we'd like to set some expectations on what PEG TV focuses on. So the one concern that Mr. Roby had was item D, which says by July 31st, 2019, provide equipment and training to county library staff to facilitate broad access to digital video tools, promoting digital literacy in Lake County. And so they've had a few issues coordinating that, and they would be agreeable with the proposal if we amend it to December 31st of 2019, that deadline. And so I've conferred with all the other entities. Everyone is okay with this. And so I guess, no other significant terms of the agreement have changed. The financial contributions are proposed to remain the same for the next 2 years. The main thing here is clarifying on some priorities for PEG TV to focus on. So that's my report, unless you have questions.
All right. Questions? Councilwoman Overton.
Well, and thank you for talking to Ed Roby, but that still isn't the board. And so we're approving something that they haven't even approved yet? Yes. Is that really appropriate? I mean, I think this should go to them first before it comes to us. That's my opinion. I mean, I don't want to sit here and be approving. There may be other changes they may want to make. For instance, if I was sitting on that board, there's some that I would make. On a 2-year, we're going to supply a whole bunch of equipment for a 2-year contract. I think personally I would want to make it longer. So I really think that this should be going back to the PEG board before it comes to us.
That's certainly an option. I mentioned that to Mr. Roby, and he felt like that, with that change, it was okay, but
Yeah.
The other part that,
The other part that I, the first item, what it stands for is public education. I haven't seen a whole lot of that from the PEG board, and I really like to see if they can implement something on that.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and I do apologize. I wouldn't have put this on the agenda if I realized that it hadn't had sign-off from them. And this, I found that out this week when Ed stopped by to talk to me. But, I certainly understand. One of the issues as well is that, Mayor Bennett was on the PEG board. Mr. Harris is alternate. So, there's part of the mayor's appointments tonight would resolve that, but there are going to be some changes there. So certainly understand if the council would rather wait and see how the full
So
board
if there's a
votes.
consensus of council to table this, we don't need to go to public hearing, or we can just table it
I would
at this
recommend
point.
doing it anyways, but Is
Is there
Pardon
any
me?
issue with the agreement expiring at the end of June in terms of getting it approved?
Yeah, it does technically expire at the end of June. We do have another meeting yet in June that we could bring it back. I'm not sure what PEG's board schedule is. I know they canceled a meeting that was supposed to be held this week or last week for lack of quorum. But it's not going to, I'm not aware of any reason why it would impact their operations. It's an annual contribution from the entities which has been provided, and, whether it happens a month later or whatever, I don't think is a big deal, so.
Okay. I will open this up to the public comment. Are there any public comments with regard to what we're discussing on the PEG board? Mrs. Lissalot?
Hey, don't chuckle over there. So I sat on the PEG board for quite a while, and we fought super hard not only to be funded, but to get the pass-through money that will provide the equipment. And thankfully, after 3 times in front of the Board of Soups, we were able to do that. Now, whether you approve this or not, I wanted to address some of the comments about the public and the educational thing. There are guidelines you have to in order to publicize on PEG, and a lot of the public that come forward to present things or film things for review by the TV staff, we don't get to judge a lot of things. There's only certain things that the PEG board could judge and hold off the air. And we couldn't tell them they needed better quality or content or anything like that. So what we get is really the true form of the community and who is out there in our community that is willing to put themselves forward and present. So with that, I just wanted to clarify some of that kind of stuff, because we didn't get to choose. If they became a member and they submitted their content, it was publicized, and I think Joyce knows just as well.
Anything's publicized as long as it's, there are some graphics, but that's pretty much it.
Exactly. We can't make them do more, and we can't tell them to do less, really. So that was really what I wanted to clarify on this.
May I comment here?
Thank you, Mrs. Lissalot. Sure.
I think were you wondering about the contents, like how, do we have, or you just wanted to know?
No, my concern is I haven't seen any outreach for education.
Okay.
Let me see if there's any other public comment, or is there any other comment from the public? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring this back. Is the consensus
We need to bring it back.
to continue this?
Bring it back after the PEG
Bring it
board
back
has.
after we have and we'll have a member on the PEG board as well, and
Okay.
make sure we hear from the PEG board.
Based on a comment from Ms. Lucelo, did remind me, the 1% franchise agreement, which should be used for capital equipment, is expiring later this year. I can't recall. It's September, October, I think. So we will be working on putting, that ordinance back together and bringing it back before council before that expires to see if you want to extend it.
Yeah, I think it's important that we have all that information, and I don't think we have it all at this moment, so.
But you have all the information. It's
Yeah.
just, you don't know if the PEG board agrees with it.
Yeah. So we don't have all the information. Okay, so we're going to table this item 13, and we'll bring it back when we, well, I don't know if we want to agendize it until we know.
We won't set a date until we know when the PEG board meets.
Okay, very good. Moving on to item 14, approve an agreement between the County of Lake and City of Clearlake regarding a road maintenance program for 40th Avenue, Davis Avenue, and Moss Avenue for fiscal year 2018-19 through fiscal year 2023-24. Mr. Flora.
Yes, so as you know, we recently completed the project on Moss Davis, a rehab project, and that, for I think over 20 years now has been a partnership between the county and the city of Clearlake. And there's a calculation used that's in this agreement that establishes a cost share, and the county pays the bulk of that due to East Lake landfill being there and having a dramatic impact on that roadway. A month or so ago, we became aware that the agreement had been allowed to expire. The existing agreement expired in 17-18. And so was able to work with the Public Services Director with the county to update the agreement and extend it for a total of 6 years, including 18-19, which is almost over. And so that agreement is before you. We did update and include the population numbers in the exhibit, so it's a little more clear exactly the percentage. In this case, with the population adjustments, actually the Lake County will actually be picking up a slightly higher cost share than had been done previously, so it's a nice benefit for the city as well.
23%, 77 if I...
Yes, that's correct.
All right, any questions here? Open it up to the public for comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for action.
I move that we approve resolution number 2018-19-30, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake approving an agreement between the City of Clear Lake and the County of Lake regarding a road maintenance program for 40th Avenue, Davis Avenue, and Moss Avenue for fiscal year 2018-19 through fiscal year 2023-24.
Second. We have a motion by Vice Mayor Slotin, a second by Councilwoman Overton. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We're going to take a 5-minute recess at this moment. We'll be back at approximately, what, 7 minutes to 8? Pardon me?
It's 10 o'clock, just
check the Warriors score.
Score, is that what you said?
Yeah. They're ahead by 2.
They're ahead?
By 2. Third quarter. Good. Good.
I was just curious, I wasn't clear when you guys passed the registration for the vacant buildings. There was some talk about maybe reducing the
No, they were not reduced.
Well, we
but you can, there's a mention that
You can appeal
Is
it.
that like a plan that, are you guys planning on reducing them later or looking at it, revising it?
Well, I think it was just discussed, but it's not something that we're going to do right now, so.
So, yeah.
Yes, yeah. It'll be like it's presented, and then unless something happens and we decide in the future to lower the fees, it will stand as it was presented to us, so, yeah. Now, if somebody doesn't agree with that they're vacant or whatever, they have the right to appeal, so, but, yeah, but it'll stay as it was presented to us, so. So how you do?
that video of the presentation.
Yeah. It's just so much easier when you see it on the video and then try to read that whole thing. A common person who doesn't know how to read all those budget things and stuff, it just, even the ones that do, it's still easier to see that up on the thing. So, yeah, put that online. Okay, Jason.
Thanks.
Okay.
Hammer on this thing.
Hallelujah. Two items. Half an hour.
Just stretch my legs. Yeah, you need to. Roll my shoulders. Hope I'm not speaking too much.
Sometimes I wonder if.
Thank you for this. Oh. Sorry if I'm speaking too much.
Tina just does not know what she's doing. We got her in a position that she just really needs to.
Really? What happened?
Nothing but. Listen, she's telling this place that I'm catering their thing. I need to get a food permit. I don't need. She's telling them I have to go get a permit from the city to be able to, for them to have their event. I don't have to get a permit for them. They're their event. It's like, I don't know what she's telling them.
Actually, wouldn't they get the permit?
I need to just, I have a, we serve food. I mean, I just have to file a thing with environmental health to say we're going to be serving food at the park. It doesn't cost me anything. I just file a paper, let them know. But she's telling this organization that I have to go in and get a city, I have to get the permit from the city. I was like, do you need the... What it is okay, I'm doing an event for somebody. They get their event permit for them to use the park. Right. So Tina's telling them she won't give them their event permit. I just turned into the environmental health, fill out the paperwork and turn it into them saying that I'm doing this at the park because our fees don't count because we already paid them. Yeah. So it's like
and you're first rate it feels like well they're violating. You want to get a registry. You have if you adopt one of these, you send an ordinance into place, and if you have properties that are they have mortgages on it. Once you start getting violations, you send it repair all this stuff, and then they'll go after the property because they don't want to lose the value. So like if you got a mortgage for your you got a mortgage for your property, you just let it go to hell. And then we have one of these ordinances that we try to issue. He's serious about people.
I know, I can see that.
Warriors are still ahead.
By two.
Actually, we haven't actually held I scheduled 7 appointments. 3 more with so 10. I scheduled 10 appointments since
We are not doing that, but we didn't bring forward a residential.
We're at somebody's house.
For solar and
Oh.
I mean, what's the roundabout cost? Because I'm interested in doing it.
Probably the average house comes out being like $250 a month for a payment.
Oh, okay.
But then you eliminate your electric bill. I would say that's an average house. So a lot of people have a $400 electric bill per month. So that will knock your electric. You'll probably have a 20+% savings on your electric bill, and you'll just have a payment now. And you'll have net zero, and then you'll have a backup generator. It's super smooth. Yeah, all you do is text me your information. You saw.
I'm texting you verbally.
Is that the way it works? No, absolutely. Oh, I need your PG&E account number, your address, your email address. So give me the email address, your PG&E account number, whatever. You put it all in one text to me, all that stuff, and then I'll get the ball rolling. But I can make it happen.
How quickly?
Make it happen.
What's the average time?
2 months.
Huh?
2 months.
2 months.
Just on HVAC right now, I'm booked out over a month, almost a month and a half. We have, today I went and pulled 5 more permits. We're pulling 5 permits every few days. 3 at the county, 2 at the city. 2 city of Lakeport, 2 at the county. Just today. We're just.
Whether you decide for us to do a week or still I'm out there all the time. We have meetings, we have all this stuff.
All right, let's get it over with so we can watch the game at home.
I think so.
We need to get Mr.
Can we get everyone here? I know that. Councilman Purdock, are you in hearing range?
Oh, he's outside.
Cheryl's man.
That was the big news when Nancy Pelosi talked today, this morning.
It was 5 minutes, not 10. They make a smaller tractor generally. All right. Back in session at 7:57. And where are we? We are on item 15. Discussion of traffic calming measures. Mr. Flora, or is that Chief White?
No. Our city engineer, so the council asked for Mr. Purdock's benefit. We're having a discussion about roads, and the council asked for some additional information about the possibility of doing speed bumps or similar traffic calming measures on some streets. And so our city engineer has done that research and would like to discuss it with the council.
Go for it.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Following your direction, we went back and conducted some research about some traffic calming measures. Chief White and I have had a number of conversations about there's a lot of different traffic calming measures out there. The operative word, I think, probably being cost effective. And so one of the more cost effective methodologies would be what we call speed tables or speed. They're not bumps, they're speed tables. And briefly, what a speed table is, it's a designed, elongated speed bump that if you are traveling the posted speed of traffic, you don't necessarily notice that you've gone over it. However, if you exceed that by a great amount, you will be very aware that you have gone over it. So with the grading of the roads and the other street work that's ongoing, of course, when a road gets regraded, and I know that Public Works staff's doing an excellent job and making a lot of great progress out there, that will tend to increase traffic speeds as well on a lot of those long straight roadways. So, speed humps, there are kind of 2 different styles, one for gravel and then one for asphalt paving. The asphalt paving ones are a little bit shorter in height, 3 to 3.5 inches tall, depending on the speed. And the gravel ones would be 4 to 4.5 inches tall, and then they're anywhere from 10 to 15 feet to go across them. The what we were suggesting, if council wants to entertain this, is maybe do a trial where we pick some roads, both paved and non-paved, and install some of these speed tables, and then make an assessment about how they work or how they don't work, the opportunities and constraints that would be presented by them, and then bring the results of that trial back to City Council. I would, if the council so chose to go that way, I would solicit some input from Public Works and PD on maybe 3 to 4 non-paved roads and 3 to 4 paved roads. And upon doing that, I would notify fire and ambulance, make sure that they didn't have any issues with the locations that we were proposing or the spacing, and if necessary, adjust that. And then what we would do is then commence to purchase signs. So if we had, say, a total of 16 speed tables, 4 on non-paved and, or I'm sorry, 8 on non-paved and 8 on paved, just for example, before and after each, or traffic oncoming each way of a speed table, we would put a sign out there so the public knows there's a speed table coming up. So we'd purchase signs and then go ahead and install those in trial traffic areas and see how they work as calming measures. And we would look again for feedback and input from Public Works, PD, and I'm sure we'll probably get some feedback from residents as well on their effectiveness. On the third page of your memorandum, I've just kind of shown you some dimensions, what a generic speed table might look like. This is the guide of probably how we would proceed to construct them if so directed by yourselves. With that, I would entertain any questions you might have. Chief White, if you have anything to add, please feel free.
Chief?
No, we've discussed the speed tables, and I think that our input's been received by the city engineer.
Okay. Councilman Overton, I think, Councilwoman Overton, I think you were up before.
I have a question. So has there been any talk about designation of where these would go, or is that just kind of in the process of researching still?
Until the council gives us some direction on if they want to try this or not, I haven't talked to Chief White or Mike Baker in Public Works, but I'm sure they'd probably pretty readily be able to come up with where they would make suggestions that they would.
I think just by some of the discussions in the council meetings on some of the speed areas would be, I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think we need to do something. We've talked about the speed bumps for a long time, just like over by Pomo and stuff, and I think maybe this is something that we do need to try. I think it's a good idea to, so I'm all in favor on moving forward and doing some investigation on it.
Councilman Purdock?
Years ago, in the interest of transparency, we used to have a traffic committee, and I believe that is still exists on the books, but I can't think of a time we've called them to meet. And I would doubt that we even have that existing list.
It is on the mayor's appointment list.
We do have it, yeah.
Right, but
but you're right. I mean, I'm not sure
can't
exactly
think of the
what
last
the
time it
intent of
met.
that committee is or how long it may have been.
And I think it's issues like this that it would be good to maybe bring before the traffic committee. And that's my only comment on that. Otherwise, I think this is a great idea. Pardon?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Harris?
Chief. Yeah.
Right, Chief?
I'm pretty excited to see this come back and the efforts you've put into it. Really, very, very much appreciate this. You know, our former mayor had a strong opinion about this, and I feel like that the roads that we are renovating on a regular basis, grading on a regular basis, are going to be extended in life considerably by a measure like this. I think that that's the number one reason why our roads, and I think Mike Baker had reiterated something to that sort as well, that the graded roads don't hold up as long because the flow of traffic increases in speed exponentially as soon as it's graded. So yeah, I mean, I like the idea of doing this trial run situation, and I'm hoping that it really has the effect we want to see happen here, and we can move forward with. If it works out the way I would hope, then I would like to see this take place on every road we grade. So every time we do a residential street, this would become a standard operation, and the installation of these would happen at the end of a grading. Thanks.
Councilman Purdock.
Actually, I think Chief had a comment.
Yeah, I just want to clarify earlier that the police department's perspective would be in support of it. In my experience, I sat on a traffic committee for many years, and it's these types of issues as well as other issues, whether people want a stop sign, et cetera. I'm often the subject of people complaining about wanting these sorts of things, but in my experience, having that group and having public participation was really important. So the group, it's not just police dominated, it's not just fire, et cetera, but it's a broad spectrum. So we would certainly avail ourselves to support that happening.
Councilman Purdock.
Again, I absolutely support this. We, just a quick little story. I'm helping a neighbor out, helping a friend out, doing some weeding, and we just paved Phillips, and I see a person driving down the road with a rim and no tire and making a groove in the brand new paving that we just put down. And then I see additionally, as we finish a grading project, fishtail marks where somebody's been, obviously accelerating greatly. And as much as we try to fix the streets, so Chief, I applaud your traffic officer and trying to help also remedy that by additional patrols and the efforts there, because this is absolutely a problem, and I'd love to see something to save the streets that we're trying to rebuild after all these years. Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to open this to public comment.
I'm Bonnie Blumenthal. I live at 4323 Mullen and Emery, one block in from Lakeshore. And I love it that you had several pictures of my neighborhood on the screen for us. Between the hours of 4 o'clock in the afternoon and probably 8, there is so much screeching going on in my neighborhood and so many people going so fast and making so much noise. And there's a big congestion right there, right where I live, next to the pot shop, and just around the corner from the car wash. And anyhow, I have to say, please, if you could park a police car there, even a volunteer car with nobody in it, just on Lakeshore, starting around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it would cut some of the more egregious driving, acting out that's going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for their efforts too, because I'm excited about this. As we pass Measure V and we look at our roads, I really don't want my road paved early because of this issue. Also, there's several other things I'd encourage people to take into consideration. We've had quite a few neighborhood watch, neighborhood community meetings, and excessive speed in our neighborhoods is always on the top of those lists. It's one of the top 3 issues. I like the idea of a committee. However, a committee isn't necessarily made up of the people who are living in the streets that you're working on. And I know that for my street, we have a substandard street. In other words, it's very narrow. And when people are speeding on that, that means the street physically is like a car and a half wide, and fully it's only 35 feet wide. So, and there's a big hill that nobody goes over. So we get hit in our properties. So I think a committee that has never met may not be as effective as bringing in a neighborhood watch, or at the time you're getting ready to do the roads, maybe have a public forum for those roads as to where you might put the barriers. So, I'm excited about the idea of speed bumps. The other thing, where you do have non-standard streets, could we look at whether a 25 mile an hour speed is actually accurate, because we have no curbs, gutters, and sidewalks for public pedestrian traffic, where there is a lot of that on my substandard street. So the combination of a number of things maybe need to tighten up and be supportive of actually achieving our goals. Where might we put them? And I think the people who live in those neighborhoods versus somebody who lives somewhere else in the city might have a really good idea. And since it looks like what we're doing about 3 projects a year, it's not a huge amount, maybe those communities could feel like they really have an input for their own neighborhoods. So I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ullman. Ms. Duke?
Patty Duke, 4950 Spruce Street. Can you put a camera at Lake Shore and 53 and tickets to the people that run that light? That is the most run light I've ever seen. I mean, when it turns, I wait. I wait. Because there's at least 1 or 2, sometimes 3 cars. You could make money.
Is that 53 or old 53?
It's old 53.
Okay.
And Lakeshore Drive.
Lakeshore Drive, right?
And
Just wanted to
all
clarify.
the time. Oh, my.
Thank you, Ms. Duke.
Money.
Are there any other public comments? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back. Are there any comments from the folks? I have one comment. I agree with you, Ms. Duke. Old 53 in Lake Shore, the traffic signal there, in my humble opinion, is not timed well. I'm just agreeing with the comment. At any rate, getting back to the traffic calming measure, will entertain I guess we're just looking for direction now, so a consensus is all we need.
Let's try it. Do you want to refer it maybe back to that committee or no?
No, I'll get to the committee in a minute, but
I'm going to say, if we're not going to refer it back to the traffic committee, can we just take that off the appointed thing? I've been here for 15 years and never have I been to a meeting.
Ms. Councilwoman Overton, I believe that traffic committee is going to probably be used going forward.
You just said, no, you weren't going to refer it back to the traffic committee if we're doing
I
traffic.
said we're looking for a consensus of the council, whether we want to direct them to go forward with the calming measures, and I think that's what I'm asking for, the consensus here.
And then he asked, do you want to refer it back to the traffic committee? And you said no.
All I'm asking for now is direction. I think the traffic committee meeting is certainly free to discuss that. That's a committee, which you're on. But if you want to add that we'll refer it to the traffic committee, you're free to do that. So, do we need a motion or just a direction?
I think maybe depending on what your direction is, but some consensus.
All right, do we want?
I'm extremely excited about the idea of trying something to slow people down.
Yeah, I think that Dave, as a city engineer, and our police chief White can determine which would be a good place to put these speed bumps on a trial basis.
I concur.
Ms. Overton?
So we can work on that and develop some trial sites. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share with myself or Chief White or the city engineer on some great spots that might work, feel free to let us know.
I'd love to put Canocta View on that list, and then I can monitor it on a regular basis and see how effective
that's not going to happen.
All right.
And then, based on the discussion on the traffic committee, if I can see some value in doing it. I think with the current membership right now, it's just Councilmember Overton and myself. I'm not sure how I got on
Well,
there. but,
I'm going to be appointing one more.
I would like to maybe
Or-
expand that a little bit to include some other folks, but
I
we
I
could
think
perhaps
that's
do that.
I think that's under item 16, but, or I'm sorry, yeah, item 16. So I think the direction is that we do want to see the traffic calming measures tried. So we'll move on to consideration of mayor's appointments.
Just on that one item, just if it's not going to come back to you, or like, what I was thinking was you would examine some sites and then bring it back to you, say, this is our plan.
Mhm.
You would formally approve it. If you're not going to do that, then you should take a vote to approve them to go forward and do it.
I think we'd like to hear back.
That's what I was thinking, okay.
Okay?
So just so I'm clear, we'll put together a kind of a plan and bring it back for your consensus then.
Yes. All right. Any more discussion on that particular item? So we can move on to item 16, consideration of mayor's appointments for 2019.
Mr. Harris would like a do-over.
You want to do over?
Do over. So I want to.
We're going to do it.
Hold on now. Let's back it up a second because I thought what we were agreeing to was the idea that we were going to establish some test locations and go ahead and run a test.
Okay, that's fine. What the Deputy City Attorney is saying, if you want to do that, he recommends that you actually vote on it rather than just.
I would like to vote on it then because I'd like to go ahead and move forward. I don't want to hold this off. I want to go ahead and get going.
All right.
I don't want to wait. So.
All right. Is that,
Go for it.
I want to.
Just to be clear then, you're giving them the authority to select the site.
This I am.
make your motion and state.
So I'd
what
like
you
to
want.
make a motion that I give authority to city manager, city staff, and the public works, the engineering firm to identify locations for a test run on this particular style of traffic.
Speed table.
Speed table for speed reduction.
And
install them and bring back the data so we can use that for potential expansion of the project.
Motion has been made.
Second.
Second, motion is made by Councilman Harris, seconded by Vice Mayor Slotin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. Are we ready to move on to item 16? Consideration of mayor's appointments. I see no reason to, unless someone wants off of a committee right now, no one has expressed that to me. So what I have done basically is just look at those committees that are vacant because of the resignation of former Mayor Bennett. And that would include Abandoned Vehicle Authority, Integrated Waste Management Task Force, PEG Board, Traffic Safety Committee, Area Planning Council, and I believe that's it. There was one I had a question about, Mr. Flora. Lake County Clean Water Program Advisory Council chose vacant alternate. Was that something that should come from council, or is that?
I think it's more appropriate to have a staff representative on that.
That's what I thought we'd come up with, so that didn't have that. At any rate, those that are vacant, my proposal is just to have new Councilman Purdock step into those vacant positions, if he's willing to do that.
I told you I was, sir.
I wanted you to tell all of us that.
And so to clarify, that's the Abandoned Vehicle Authority, the Integrated Waste Management Task Force,
PEG Board,
and
Traffic Safety Committee,
Area Planning.
and Area
Council.
Planning.
Okay.
And again, if there's anyone that wants off of a committee, speak now, or?
I have two comments. I contacted the sewer district to see when we have our next meeting, and I was told never. So I don't know why we have this on there. The second one is, and I do believe this is, the Lake County Airport Land Use Committee. That's actually becoming more active.
Yes, it is.
And we have 2 members on that committee, according to what the county told me.
One's alternate, though, is it not?
No,
At
it's
least that's what we have you down as.
two members from us.
2 members?
Yeah.
Two members as opposed to, rather than just an alternate?
Yeah.
Well, then you would become the second
Right,
member,
so-
then, if that's correct.
That had alternated every other year between Lakeport and Clearlake.
Yeah.
Oh, who has 1 or 2 seats?
Right. So Lakeport has this year, we would have next year.
I don't know if City Clerk Swanson knows.
If you would check that
I
out.
don't know for the airport land use. They've never contacted my office.
When I was
I know-
serving as mayor, that's what they.
That's what they did? Okay. When I contacted, that's what they told me, so.
Could we get clarification on that, Melissa? But at this point, I would say then, if in fact we do have 2 members, then it'd be, obvious choice would be for you to move up to membership. So pending that, I'd like to propose, as I have just mentioned, Mr. Purdock fill the other positions that are vacant due to former Mayor Bennett's.
So moved.
I have one more item I'd like to bring up. So the zoning code update committee, which was mentioned earlier, hasn't met a whole lot recently, but that's going to change because we want to have that adopted later this year. So Lisa Wilson held one of the community member seats, and now she's on the planning commission. There's a vacant seat for a planning commissioner, and she wants to have that, but that's something the planning commissioner appoints. But the city council appoints the community member. So I don't know how you want to handle that, whether you have someone in mind or you want to do some applications or what, but that is a seat that I'd like to see filled in the next couple of months, because that committee will become more active.
All right, if it would be all right, then I'll table that one thing and I'll bring it back I'll let you know and to agendize it, does that work, or do you want me?
So you're going to try to identify someone, is that what you're saying? Or
Well, you just indicated, is it part of the mayor's, or is somebody else going to do that?
Well, I think the council normally appoints that person, so I don't know if you want to provide any clarification, but.
With the vacancies, and it's a committee that is approved by all council members. According to the norms and procedures, the council would take applications for that vacancy, and then it would come back to the council for a decision.
So would you then post that?
Then I would advertise for the vacancy, take applications, and then it would be agendized at a future council meeting.
Okay, then please do that. Anything else?
I moved that we confirmed, sorry, I didn't say it.
Do we need public comment on that?
Yep.
Is there any public comment with regard to those? All right, seeing none, I close the public hearing part of it and bring it back.
I'm an alternate on 5 items, and I very much appreciate that because I have very limited time in the midday. All these committees are midday. But if I do end up being taking somebody's spot as an alternate, I just ask that we get as much notification as possible. And I found it pretty difficult to get notification like day of, so hour before, for example, the meeting. So if we can, with as much notification, I know things come up, but it would just help me greatly. Thank you so much.
Let me tell you now.
All right.
Knows all the
I
meetings he's
moved
gonna
that,
We're getting testy here.
I moved that we confirm the mayor's appointments.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Councilwoman Overton. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now, we're getting down to the end. City manager report?
Yes, I have a few items in no particular order on my list here. So we'll be hosting a second housing fair on June 29th. That's Saturday from 11 to 1 here at City Hall. We had one a few months ago, had a fairly good turnout, but we're doing this on a Saturday and hoping that maybe we get some more interest. So this will be, it's organized by the Lake County Economic Development Corporation. There'll be representatives from the USDA here, as well as our own staff talking about our first-time home buyers program. But there's a tremendous number of resources out there if people are interested in transitioning to home ownership. About 50% of our dwellings in City of Clearlake are rental. And so there's a lot of great programs that will work for a lot of people, and so we'd really like folks to know about this and to be able to take advantage of it. So June 29th, 11 to 1 o'clock here at City Hall. We also had a meeting this week that was hosted by the EDC and the city related to public safety power shutdown, and this was focused on small businesses developing a plan for that. It was very sparsely attended. And I want to, just point out that this is going to happen. It's going to affect all of us. It's going to affect all of us a number of times. Everyone needs to be prepared. There is one more of these meetings scheduled next Monday at 5:30. This one's going to be in Lakeport City Hall. So if you're talking to business folks out there, make sure they're aware that they should come. They have a nice little packet put together of some information that you can help prepare, and it's focused on any type of disaster, not just the power shutdowns, but a lot of good things for folks to be thinking about, and PG&E representatives will also be at that meeting for questions.
Monday at Lakeport?
That's next Monday, the 17th, Lakeport City Hall at 5:30. Continuing to recruit for Public Works Director. So far, we've still been unsuccessful in that pursuit. I did get a call from our recruiter during the meeting, so I'm anxious to check my voicemails if we get out of here tonight. So, as your council's very aware, working on a lot of projects right now. Highlands Harbor project is pretty much complete. As well as the Moss Davis project, Burns Valley Civic Center project here. We're in the middle of that one, but it's going well. And doing a lot of grading. We are now this week running 2 crews, 1 potholing and doing other pavement rehab, and 1 doing grading. So it's exciting. They're still working out some kinks and being as efficient as we would like for them to be. But, I was looking at last year's numbers, and do you know how many feet of road we graded in June last year? 0. We graded about 2,600 lineal feet in July. I'm not sure the exact number, but they're doing, with 1 crew, like today, I think they did about 1,200 lineal feet. They've done well over 10,000. So far. So we have a good jump on it. We're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to be more efficient. But, we still have a lot of things to work out. City engineer has been, extremely helpful in coming up with creative ideas and working with our crew. So really appreciate all that. So the potholing, they're starting out at the city limits on the north side of the city and working back this way on San Joaquin and Lakeshore. So if you're out there, it is an improvement. We can tell a difference in the job that they're doing even after a couple days of experience and continue to get better at what they're doing. But we've been providing, city engineer's been providing some assistance and ideas to continue to improve that, but excited that we're able to do that. We're still bringing on some additional staff to get our crew fully up and going, but making a lot of progress right now, and just want to make sure and keep that momentum going. Did want to mention we will be demoing the concrete building that burned out across from Cortai on the 22nd of this month. So we have that contract in place, and that will be happening unless something changes. That's all good to go. So that'll be nice. Some of you were at the Clearlake PD K-9 event a few weeks ago, which is a great event. I don't know if the chief has any numbers on the amount of dollars raised, but I thought they did an awesome job. It was a lot of fun, and it looked like they've really rehearsed ways to bring in money for a lot of things that I've never thought of before, and I just thought it was a wonderful event. Some of you participated in the Cubic Immersion Tour this week. So this is a marketing firm that was hired by the Tourism Improvement District to develop a brand for Lake County as a tourism destination. And so they had a number of focus groups and things. I know at least Mayor Kramer and Vice Mayor Slutin participated in those. Chief White and myself also gave them a tour of Clearlake on their way in from Sacramento, so that they got a good feel for our community and some of the things that we're working on. And just a couple final things. Chief White let me know that we do have our dedicated traffic enforcement officer back on focusing only on traffic enforcement due to increased staffing levels in the police department. So I'm sure that'll help out some of the issues that we've heard about tonight. It'll be good to have officer back on the street focusing on that. And one final thing, if you haven't registered for the League of Cities Conference on October 16th through 18th and would like to participate, please let City Clerk Swanson know, and she will make those accommodations.
Are you going?
Already
registered?
And one final thing, the Warriors are down by 3 with 1 minute and 30 seconds.
He's going to check.
That's my report.
There's a flip-flop. Councilmember Purdock has well, first of all, Chief White, do you have any comments in regard to what City Manager Flora was saying?
No.
No?
He wants to go.
No, we are excited about the traffic officer to return back, so he'll start next week. And a lot of the issues that you've heard here, I've heard since I started here. Traffic is one of the top complaints. So we are excited to be able to field that dedicated unit back out on the street. So look forward to seeing the results.
No financial report on the K-9 dinner, though.
I've heard around 30,000, but I don't know
Wow.
whether that includes the expenses.
too.
But it was very good, they said.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay, Councilmember Purdock, as the new guy, you go first.
Thanks. I just really want to thank everyone. Thank you for your support. I was really surprised when Mayor Bennett unfortunately had to step down. I was thankful that he called and asked if I'd be interested in submitting an application, though, to fill his spot. And I appreciate that, that respect. I'd like to thank my wife, who authorized me to put in my application, as well as my boss, because I wanted to go to them first, obviously. But anyway, it's good to be back. Thank you very much. And I look forward to keeping the good work going.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to report. I just really wanted to talk about like some of the motivating things that are taking place in the city. One in particular that I'm super excited about. I got to hand it to the Chamber of Commerce for coming together and putting together some unique things that are exciting for our community and actually bring a big old smile to this big kid's face. And the Soapbox Derby on the 21st of September is just amazing. I mean, what a fantastic concept. So you hear that if you're listening to this. September 21st, I think the first ever Soapbox Derby in Clearlake. is going to happen. So you got to get to building the soapbox derby car for that. I've already had multiple people reach out to me because, people know that I'm a big kid. So they're like, so you're going to build, oh, of course I'm going to have one of this. I may have several, I'm probably going to sponsor others, but I'm just so excited about this thing. And I think that these kind of things really bring a sense of community and excitement into our community, and it builds the character of what we are as a community. And we come together on stuff like this, and to have some fun is great, so I'm really excited about seeing this happen. But any other things? I think right now we have a really dynamic team there at the Chamber of Commerce putting together this kind of stuff and bringing up these things. And of course, the city's involved in this, serious hand in this. I appreciate all the efforts of the city staff on this as well. But yeah, so you'll see me down there. And so make sure there's a rescue crew on hand because, once I get going in one direction, it's hard to stop me.
I look forward to you seeing me in front of you.
So you're building, huh?
I've got tricks.
Yes,
I've got tricks.
We got competition.
All right. Are you done?
That's it.
Councilwoman Overton.
Well, I've been gone on vacation, so I don't have a lot. I am looking forward to the Soapbox Derby and watching both of you guys while I stand and wave as you guys go by. I'll cheer you on. I'll be the cheerer. So it was mentioned about the police parking a car in areas, and I did notice that the sheriff department, and I watched it for a while because I've said that before. I watched it before. The sheriff's department parked one down in Lower Lake. And even though I wasn't speeding, I automatically put my brake on. I noticed that I just automatically did that. There was no person in that vehicle, though, when I passed. And even though they let it sit there for probably, quite a while, I just kind of started watching because I go through there a couple of times a week, and I just started watching how people automatically started slowing down. And so that might be something that I know we have some cars sitting out here, and like I said, it could be one of the VIP cars. It doesn't have to be the regular police cars. But I think that might be an idea that we should start looking at placing in some different areas where speeders tend to be more prevalent at, such as up there by the car wash. That's a horrible place that, the people do go by there really fast. So I totally agree with our public comment person who stated that. So just wanted to put my little opinion in on that. Also, the only other thing I have is that we're going to be having burger night down at the senior center, just a little sponsor thing. It's $10, just inviting the public to come to that and help support our senior center. And that's it for me.
What date on that?
Oh, that's the 28th, June 28th, Friday, at 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Sloat?
I also attended the K-9 dinner, very nice event, and I was happy to help out there by attending. And thanks, Chief White, for getting a spot for us. Thank you. I also attended the branding focus group in Upper Lake. Interesting. I don't, they came from Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, to do that here. I also attended the public safety power shutdown meeting here. My big concern is, and I think we addressed it a little bit today with our emergency ordinance, some of the people that have medical issues and they need to have power, that we are able to identify some of those and hopefully be able to help out. How that's exactly going to work, I'm not sure, but I also attended the Lakeport dedication of their new community center. It was very nice from Bank of America. I guess I wish they had it done for the one next to us here. I also attended the at KEC a all-day meeting was organized by our superintendent schools, Donna, and I think Russ and I attended those. Very informing. They're basically the school to prison pipeline. It did come out from there that we need more opportunities for kids after school to keep themselves busy. So especially in the summer, that's an issue. We need to figure out how we can have our Parks and Rec department not only dealing with parks, but also with some recreation. And that's my report.
Thank you. All right, I attended the APC LTA meeting here on Tuesday, and including the tour of Clearlake that City Manager Flora also was on. It highlighted some of our lesser roads that I think we're hopefully going to be working on soon, and I think we'll be working with LTA and Paratransit, Transit Authority to perhaps modify either the road or their routes. APC meeting was, we went through both APC and LTA. We went through the budgets for this coming year and the audits of past years. Our audits were actually pretty good. A couple of small things were found on each. Attended the K-9 dinner with Vice Mayor Slotin and City Manager Flora. It was a great dinner. I'm glad to hear it made so much money, and hopefully it's a pretty important part of our force, having the K-9 unit. So that's great. The branding focus group in Upper Lake, I also had kind of mixed reviews on. I think though that they did a good job of interviewing each of the participants. They were looking for, I think, both what we have now and what we find as maybe the challenges and the perception of what we believe the perception is now and what we would like for it to be. Focused a little bit on what we felt the strong points of Lake County was. I think, and certainly on my day, the concerns were how we have responded from 5 years of fire. And the perception is that folks outside of our county maybe don't realize we're in business to the extent that we are. Our perception of the strong thing, or the people that were there, perception of the strong points of the county are its beauty. And both tourism from wine and from the lake were discussed on my day. Fishing, you're talking about the Chamber of Commerce and their bringing of the soapbox derby going forward. They also, I think, helped greatly with the fishing tournament that was hosted out of Redbud Park and Thompson Harbor for the first time. And apparently the feedback that I've gotten is it went over very well, and perhaps hopefully will lead to more events happening out of Redbud. Shakespeare on the Lake is coming in September. We've got a lot of good things happening here, and I think it'll
August.
Pardon me? August, excuse me. I think that's a great event to come here, and I hope to see it come, and I hope to see it next year in our new amphitheater. And last but not least, I'm really glad that former Mayor Bennett talked you into applying, Mr. Purdock, and that your wife gave you the approval to go ahead. And your boss. I welcome you back. You bring leadership, proven leadership to our council. So welcome. And that's all I have.
With that?
So, future agenda items. Well, I don't know that
I think
we've talked about that, so I'm not going to beat that anymore. Let's adjourn at 8:44.
I'll just say that I expect to see a little police car type soapbox, yes.
Good point.
We actually were looking at a code enforcement related one. That's the motorhome from Spaceballs. I looked.